Raven and Swan. Raven is as black as coal. He was envious of the swan because her feathers were as white as the purest snow. The foolish bird got the idea that if he lived like the swan, swimming and diving all day long and eating the weeds and plants that grow in the water, his feathers would turn white like the swan's. So he left his home in the woods and fields and flew down to live on the lakes and in the marshes. But though he washed and washed all day long, almost drowning himself at it, his feathers remained as black as ever. And since the water weeds he ate did not agree with him, he got thinner and thinner, and at last he died. Moral of the story: a change of habits will not alter nature. The raven was envious of the swan's pure white feathers, which contrasted sharply with his own coal black plumage. He mistakenly believed that the swan's color was a result of her aquatic lifestyle, that constant swimming, diving, and eating water plants somehow made her feathers white. This logical error drove him to abandon his natural woodland habitat and attempt to live on lakes and marshes. The raven's envy blinded him to the reality that the swan's whiteness was simply part of her nature, not something that could be acquired through imitation. The raven symbolizes anyone who is dissatisfied with their own identity and tries to become someone else. It is important to be yourself rather than trying to copy someone else. Thank you very much. Ernest Hemingway and his opinions about war. Ernest Hemingway was born 126 years ago in America. He caveats about the mindless killing that war unleashes seem to resonate uncannily in contemporary times when war has phenomenally gained in prominence as a smart and swift way of global profiteering. The 21st century wars have now cunningly outsmarted the 20th century ones that killed millions of people for no fault of their own. As 2026 is the year when Hemingway's first published novel, The Sun Also Rises, that foregrounded the trauma and devastation of war, turns 100, one wonders whether from 1926 to 2026, through these 10 decades, civilization has matured and mellowed or escalated into abysmal depths. In mid 2026, we still are witness to mass murders, targeted killings, and programmed wars. The first panacea for a mismanaged nation is inflation of the currency. The second is war. Both bring a temporary prosperity, both bring a permanent ruin. In The Sun Also Rises, the young men and women of the 1920s who were absolutely traumatized by the impact of the First World War were described as members of the lost generation. Now, all young people who are directly or indirectly involved in 21st century wars and warlike conflicts are no longer primarily Europeans and Americans as in the 1920s. Wars raged and are raging in Europe, West Asia, Africa, and South Asia. Big wars, middling wars, small wars are all about the use of highly expensive, sophisticated weapons which are promoted and publicized in the global arms markets, highlighting their gruesome precision. Defense departments are renamed war departments. Defense ministers visit countries peddling their latest weapons. Hemingway's birth country, that is USA, is the world's largest exporter of war weapons. At present, the world's largest importer of war weapons is Ukraine. Hemingway writes in A Farewell to Arms. I was always embarrassed by the words sacred, glorious, and sacrifice, and the expression in vain. We had heard them, sometimes standing in the rain almost out of earshot, so that only the shouted words came through. Now, for a long time, and I had seen nothing sacred, and the things that were glorious had no glory. In the 20th century, Hemingway was one of the premier writers who repeatedly and tirelessly emphasized the destructive fallout of war in his powerful and sensitive novels. Once he wrote, there are people who are afraid of their officers. It is with them the war is made. War is no longer made by simply analyzed economic forces, if it ever was. War is made or planned now by individual men, demagogues, and dictators who play on the patriotism of their people to mislead them into a belief in the great fallacy of war when all their wanted reforms have failed to satisfy the people they misrule. Wars are caused by undefendable wealth. Never think that war, no matter how necessary nor how justified, is not a crime. Thank you very much. The sun also rises, foregrounded the trauma and devastation of First World War. Foreground means bringing an issue, topic, or idea to a prominent, highly visible position. War is no longer made by simply analyzed economic forces. It is made or planned now by individual men, demagogues, and dictators who play on the patriotism of their people to mislead them into a belief in the great fallacy of war when all their wanted reforms have failed. VAUNTED, wanted means praised or talked about more than you deserve. Thank you very much.